Now for further analysis, we're joined by geopolitical analyst Ali Elyader, live from Isfahan. Thank you so much for being with us, Mr. Elyader. Now, the United States has carried out strikes for the 12th consecutive night, and Iran has responded with attacks on U.S. bases in the Middle East. Is there still any realistic path to diplomacy for Iran, or has the conflict entered a new phase?
Honestly, Tehran's perspectives has been clearly stipulated by the ex-IRGC General, Mr. Mohsen Rezai, and the current advisor. He has basically said that the days of aggression and in parallel having or complementing aggression with diplomacy is over. So when Iran sees provocation, when Iran sees violations, mainly the violations pertaining to the MOU, obviously, and the American lack of commitment to their signatures, obviously they retaliate or they react. Therefore, as long as volatility continues, as long as Iran is met with aggression, as long as Iranian civil infrastructure is hit, Iran will retaliate, probably more methodically accurate and strategic than the Americans. We have seen Americans hitting desperate, repeated targets. These are targets that perhaps were made redundant by Iranian military forces and their inventories, made redundant 20 years ago. But the Americans continue to do their so-called double tap missiles against these sites that have been made redundant. We saw Americans hitting boats or fishing boats with no ammunition, similar to what they did in Venezuela. We've seen Americans target hospital or ambulances near the bridges. So I think these are, again, desperate American tactics, desperate imperial tactics that we can see. Maybe they take the lead from, or they try to copy the Israeli doctrine, but that's not going to work. However, how Iran reacts, we see, is it's methodically hitting anti-missile batteries, radar systems, and geographically moving the American sphere of influence, military sphere of influence, in a broader radius of proximity, meaning they're pushing them back all the way to Jordan and near Israel. And we can see the Iranians are acting more methodically, more strategically, more competent in the act of retaliation and the warfare that's being conducted. Plus, they're also morally acting more ethical with regards to rules of war. Obviously, they've hit civilian infrastructure as they had warned because their civilian infrastructure was hit. But I think obviously these kind of kinetic actions only delay diplomacy, and it is a cause of concern that this increased volatility will turn into an escalation trap. However, Iran realizes that it possesses the dominance in this escalation trap.
The Strait of Hormuz and Red Sea shipping routes are both under growing pressure. How serious is the risk to global energy supplies and international trade if these disruptions continue?
Obviously, the Strait of Hormuz constituted 20 million barrels of oil being exported and spread through the energy markets of the globe, including the Far East and all across the globe, including Europe. Around 12 million barrels were disrupted because of the blockade and because of the Iranian forces closing the Strait of Hormuz. But there was around 6 million barrels being diverted through the Red Sea. Those were mainly Saudi-led exports. And those have been obviously disrupted recently by the reactions and the retaliatory measures of Ansarullah. So you're looking at close to 20 million barrels a day being removed from the energy markets. And this has been accumulative over a period of time. Now, the Americans and their system, especially with manipulating the market through speculation, and since the futures market is 70% run by AI technology in recent days, and the AI technology was taking the lead from speculation and providing a false narrative for the future prices of oil. But now that we're seeing the spot prices increase, I think the futures prices will also adjust because you cannot move away from the actual reality. The whole global economic system, from buildings to construction to building bridges to the fuel on your the transport on your roads to planes to trains to ships, everything runs on energy. And when you have that lack of supply, eventually it's going to hit. And I think the biggest implication might be for Far East Asia and especially China. Now, China had a lot of reserves that it was tapping into, but now because of this impending economic crisis, I think China is going to have a more influential role moving forward and might pressure the Americans to stop these war games and these acts of volatility in our region. That's how I think it will move forward. And obviously, the crisis is going to hit everybody's pockets across the world if this continues.
So Washington has announced a civilian nuclear agreement with Saudi Arabia while its confrontation with Iran continues. How is this development being viewed in Tehran, and could it further reshape the regional balance of power?
Obviously, again, these I think are undermining, contradictory messages and signals coming from the United States. These are desperate measures because what you'd create when you create volatility and provocation. The Americans were insisting that the main problem they had with Iran was that Iran doesn't attain or obtain a nuclear weapon. Their Iranian nuclear program was the most important factor. They essentially hugely damaged many of Iran's peaceful nuclear construction and peaceful nuclear setups in Iran. So when you're having contradictory statements, when you do not have the same level of when you don't have the same level of basically acting the same with your allies, supposed allies like Saudi, and you're trying to force the Iranians to participate in nuclear non-proliferation, this is completely contradictory. This is completely biased. And Iranians were anyhow recommending for many, many years for a nuclear-free zone amongst their neighbors. They recommended it. They tried to even enforce it. But when Americans take such steps forward to allow for Saudis to pursue basically a nuclear program, it only undermines peace. The same way they went along with Lebanon to try to sign a side agreement that undermined the MOU designed and mediated by Pakistan. This is again continuous volatility, continuous provocation. And the Americans don't have the same standards as they have for Iran in terms of a nuclear program, and they're trying to push Saudi towards a nuclear program. Again, this is just continued unrest and instability. Nothing more can be derived from this.
Mr. Ali Elyader, thank you so much for being with us.